welcome to the Party Room Film Festival March Madness Selection Show, presented by Matt Stice and Sam Maddox. So basically, what we're going to be doing is, there are 64 Party Room films, and that is the perfect amount to do a March Madness bracket with. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be splitting all the films up into 4 different regions, just like in the real March Madness. We're going to seed them all, and we're going to vote on the matchups. Basically, we're just going to be voting on the films that we want to advance forward, and eventually we'll have one winner. The selection committee of Sam and I went through and seeded every single one of the films. So today we're going to be unveiling the bracket, and we're going to be showing you what all the matchups are that you'll be voting on. So without further ado, let's unveil the 4 number 1 seeds.
Yeah, let's do it.
The 4 number 1 seeds of the Party Room March Madness are End of the Bloodline, Bargain Batman, The Rotten Roommate, and I'm a Monster.
Yeah, Matt, these number 1 seeds, pretty clear pattern here, all Golden Dewey winners. However, you will notice that one Golden Dewey winner was left out with Tick Tick. A coin flip was used to determine the Golden Dewey winning film that would fall to the 2 seed line. However, make no mistake, all these films are very worthy of that number 1 overall seed.
So, we will now reveal the 4 regions that are in the Party Room March Madness. The 4 regions that all the films are split into, seeded 1 through 16, are the Lake Region, Candy Town, Cemetery, and Amara.
4 pretty classic regions, 4 iconic locations used throughout the Party Room Film Festival. All these films are very honored to be placed where they're at.
The films are seeded 1 through 16 and split into these 4 regions. They will go against each other, and at the end there will be a regional champion from each of the 4 regions. That is the final 4. The final 4 will be the semifinals, and then the 2 winners of that will be in the championship match. And then you'll have the Party Room March Madness winner. So, in the Lake region, let's take a look at the matchups. We have the number 1 versus number 16 matchup. It is End of the Bloodline versus Life is Not Meaningless.
Hey, you got the end of Sam Maddox's Bloodline there versus the end of Annie English's life. Who knows which film will come out on top?
In the 8-9 matchup in the Lake region, we have Photophoria, directed by Paul, versus Red Band Trailer, directed by Zach.
A pretty strong matchup there. You know, I think some might say that Red Band Trailer is seated a little too high, but if you look back, very underrated film from its time.
A classic indeed from year 1 that's often overlooked. The 5-12 matchup, UGG versus Multiverses by Landers.
Yeah, Multiverses is maybe one of those forgotten films out there, but a classic in its own right versus the new up-and-coming heavyweight, UGG, from this past year.
The 4 seed, Autobiopic, against the 13, Procrastination, from year 1.
Pretty strong matchup there. Maybe Andrew King's Autobiopic seated a little low, but tough matchup for it, heading up against Procrastination.
Number 6 versus number 11, Thrice the Stice versus Art is Life. 2
really good films here. Kind of surprised to see them this low on the seed line. Look for a possible upset there with Art is Life.
The 3 versus the 14, Meaningless McGlone Fever Dream versus Call of Duty Unsightly Zombies.
Pretty good matchup here. Unsightly Zombies, one of those slow and sluggish teams that likes to slow down the pace. Meaningless McGlone Fever Dream, a film that kind of came out of nowhere and surprised people in year 2.
Just 1 vote off of the Golden Dewey. The 7 versus the 10, we have How to Find Food in the Wild by Aaron versus Rex Moriendum by Jacob.
A little bit of a story within the story there. A classic Aaron versus Jacob matchup in the first round. Cannot wait to see how this one turns out.
Indeed. The 2 versus 15, Wet versus Obligation.
Wow, what a great matchup that is. Wet, maybe one of the most iconic Party Room films of all time, versus Obligation, just squeaked into the tournament, similarly to how it just squeaked into the film festival.
But it made it, and there it is. And that concludes the Lake region. So, what are your initial thoughts on this region?
So I think it's a pretty strong region overall. 1 through 16, pretty strong. Of course, you got Life is Not Meaningless, the lowest overall seeded film in this bracket. End of the Bloodline, a pretty strong, consistent film throughout the years. Has stayed in the top 10, so it has good longevity. But do not count out those 2 through 5 seeds there with Wet, Meaningless Fever Dream, Autobiopic, and UGG. That's a really strong field that End of the Bloodline may not come out of alive.
Indeed. Moving on to the next region, let's take a look at those matchups. In the Candy Town region, the number 1 seed, Bargain Batman, will face up against the number 16 seed, Bullseye by Jacob McGlone.
Bargain Batman, one of the classic films. Bullseye, is it a film? Is it a love story? Who knows? Will this be the end of its story in this bracket?
The 8 versus the 9, we have Le Plumier versus Interconvolution.
This is one of the best 8-9 matchups we have. 2 really great films. Interconvolution, I think, maybe seated a little low, but blame the committee, which is us, but who cares?
The 5-12 matchup, we have Perfect from Josiah versus Game Night from Sam.
Game Night in year 3, it got plunged by... shoot. Let me start over. Game Night in year 3 had a really tough matchup up against Zack and Kill Happy that year. Another tough matchup with Perfect, who's going to look to plunge the competition coming out of the Candy Town region.
The 4 versus the 13. Evil versus Offsides.
2 great films, one from year 1, one from year 5. Evil, some say, might be the most quintessential party room film. Offsides with Romeo and Juliet story. Can it have a Cinderella story? Who knows?
The 6 versus 11 matchup pits Chronicles of Light Book 6 versus Snap from year 1.
Chronicles of Light Book 6, the finale on one of the greatest trilogies, the greatest trilogy in Party Room, maybe the only one that we'll ever see, coming up against Snap there, a year 1 entry, one of the black and white films, falling here in the Candy Town region.
In the 3 versus 14, we have Mr. Numbers versus Death by Friendship.
Mr. Numbers just falling short of that Golden Dewey in year 5, but make no mistake, it very well could be a number 1 overall. Death by Friendship, Mitchell Judy's first comedic entry into the Party Room Film Festival during his Party Room career.
7 versus 10, we have Science versus Trapped.
Science, the latecomer, the second most viewed film on the channel. Is it seated a little too low? Who knows? Do not know how long... Science was one of the quickest up-and-coming stories, shot up to the second most viewed film on the channel just right after the festival, going up against Trapped from year 1, a super short, literally a super short film. Will its time be super short here?
The 2 versus the 15 matchup puts Pegged up against the Trevor film classic Red Pilled Sabotage.
Pegged just missed out on that number 1 overall line.
And that concludes the Candy Town region. Sam, what are your thoughts?
Overall, this region looks pretty good. Bargain Batman, a pretty strong number 1 overall seed. Maybe one of the few number 1s that might make it out of its region. But looking at Mr. Numbers there, that could be a dark horse coming out of this region. Chronicles of Light was really well received and is the most viewed film in the film festival so far. So look out for that as the number 6. Science, you have no idea where that's going to go. I think one of the lower seeds could come out of this region if it's not Bargain Batman, but we will see how the voters vote.
Moving on to the 3rd region in the bracket, we have the Cemetery region. The number 1 seed in this region is The Rotten Roommate. Its opponent, Now Back to the Show, directed by Zach Adam.
A Rotten Roommate with a little bit of a home field advantage there, being in a cemetery region, hence the death of Landers. Going up against Now Back to the Show, not much to say about that one. Let's just get back to our show.
Even though Landers wasn't actually dead.
Was he not? Should we redo that?
He's not dead, remember?
I thought he was...
He made a shrine to him even though he wasn't dead.
That's right, darn it. Yeah, let's do that. Rotten Roommate, the Golden Dewey winner from year 2, Aaron's first year in the film festival, came out really strong. Going up against that 16 seed, Now Back to the Show. Let's just get back to our show.
Moving on to the 8-9 matchup, we have a Mitchell Judy classic that inspired an entire rule, Le Beige, versus Concerning Potatoes by Levi.
Yeah, the Peach coming here, not only a controversial film, but controversial that it's an 8 seed in its home court in the cemetery. Concerning Potatoes, the number 9, probably could have been seeded a little bit higher, but Levi turned it in a little too late.
The 5-12 matchup has How Not to Find Food in the Wild by Jacob going against A Day at the Park by the Red Team, directed by Josiah.
How Not to Find Food in the Wild, one of my personal favorites, top 3 overall if you ask me. Had to be seated a little lower than we wanted to just because Jacob didn't believe in his own film. Can this team believe in itself to make a run here in this bracket? Or will A Day at the Park send it home packing?
The 4 versus 13 matchup has Sweaty Gains going up against The Mousetrap Killers.
2 great films here. Sweaty Gains, the year 2 entry from Paul. Paul's coming in here with a bunch of strong entries here. And then The Mousetrap Killers, Matt's first overall entry in the Party Room Film Festival, coming in at a pretty strong 13 seed.
The number 6 versus the number 11, Power of Friendship going up against Procrastination 2, as some may call it.
Wow, I'm really surprised to see the seating lines for both of these films. Power of Friendship coming in at 6. I think that's seated a little too low. I think someone needs to have a conversation with the committee about that. However, it was a little bit late, but still, that is a little low for that part. And Procrastination 2 also underseated as an 11 in my opinion. Not really sure what the committee was doing there. But Procrastination 2, Make the Podcast Great Again, made Cody's films great again.
The 3 versus 14, Sir Sam, Where the People Walk Backwards, going up against American Unsightly.
What a wild matchup we have here. We have a good, wholesome film with Sir Sam that came in second place in the Golden Dewey voting, and then we have American Unsightly, which is not wholesome and almost made my wife puke.
7-10 matchup, we have End of the Bloodline 2 going up against Betrayal, the other Landers film in here.
A pretty good matchup, a matchup of opposites. You got End of the Bloodline 2, which is all about loyalty, going up against the Taco Bell Betrayal film from Landers. That was an instant classic. Landers one of 2 films in this film festival.
The 2 versus 15, the 2 seed in the Cemetery region. Levi's Golden Dewey winning film Tick Tick, going up against Wet Bandit's Pitch Meeting.
Yeah, Tick Tick, the Golden Dewey winning film that had to fall over to that 2 seed line just based on a coin flip. Will its clock be tick-ticking here against the Wet Bandit's Pitch Meeting?
And there you have it for the Cemetery region. Sam, initial impressions.
You have to look at the 1 and 2 in this region. Rotten Roommate and Tick Tick, pretty unlucky draw for Rotten Roommate to get the other Golden Dewey winning film in its region. However, it has a pretty solid region overall. All these films are really good. How Not to Find Food in the Wild, again, I think is vastly underseated. We'll see if it can make a run despite it not believing in itself. I think a lot of underseeded films in this region. You got Sir Sam as a 3, really probably should be higher. Power of Friendship, Procrastination 2, Sweaty Gains as a 4. I think all these films are a lot better than what these seedings indicate. So I think that makes for a really strong region here in the cemetery.
And now it's time to reveal the final region of the Party Room March Madness bracket, the Amara region. The number 1 seed here is I'm a Monster, the most recent Golden Dewey winner, going up against the 16 seed Life by Tanner Perkins.
I'm a Monster, the last number 1 overall seed, last year's Golden Dewey winning film. Can it make a run? It's got a pretty tough matchup with one of the strongest 16 seeds we have here with Life. And the art category, year 1, that Interstellar soundtrack helping lift it up a little bit. Can it have the 16-1 upset over last year's champion?
The 8-9 matchup pits Trevor's Photophobia against Aaron's The Rotten Roommate, Bad Dog.
Really good matchup here. Photophobia from Trevor. You had a lot of Nickelback, then you got Rotten Roommate, Bad Dog. A great sequel in its own right. This really is a coin flip to see who'll come out on top here.
The 5-12 matchup, it's The Greatest Showdown against the M Squad.
Trend here, a lot of Josiah films here on the 5 line. That just shows a lot of consistency. Greatest Showdown, one of his greatest entries, although they are all great. And then you got the M Squad that had all sorts of mats. Will it be too many mats to overcome the too many lions?
The 4-13 matchup has The Unstoppable Force going up against Chronicles of Light Book 4.
One of my favorite matchups in this entire bracket. Unstoppable Force last year was a fan favorite. Then you got Chronicles of Light Book 4, which kickstarted the trilogy.
6 versus 11 is Cody's Forgotten Things going up against Sam's Metal Weird Solid, Unkempt Espionage Action.
Really good matchup here. Forgotten Things, maybe Cody's best entry in the film festival so far. Metal Weird solid, maybe a little bit of a disappointing fallout for Sam in year 2.
The 314 matchup, Kill Happy versus Rotten Doppel.
Was that all you're going to say? Mm-hmm. Oh.
The 3 seed, potentially one of the strongest 3 seeds, is Kill Happy by Zach going up against Rotten Doppel, a film that was an entire year late.
Yeah, really interesting matchup here. You had Kill Happy that killed itself by being late. Could have won the Dewey in year 3. However, it was turned in late, although Rotten Doppel turned in a whole year late, dropping it down pretty far.
The 7-10 matchup, we have D. Leviry by Mitchell going up against Chronicles of Light, Book 5 by Tanner.
A really good matchup here. Maybe Mitchell's fan favorite entry into the Party Room Film Festival so far with D. Leviry, the secret sequel of Lepage, coming in 1 seat higher than its counterpart, going up against Chronicles of Light Book 5, the middle part of the great trilogy from Tanner.
The number 2 seed in the region is My Girlfriend is a Screen by Levi, going up against the 15, The Great Golden Dewey Heist by Matt.
My Girlfriend is a Screen, probably the fan favorite of the Party Room Film Festival, definitely the most streamed song on our Spotify channel, going up against The Great Golden Dewey Heist, an unfinished film from Matt Stice that could have been seated higher had it been finished.
It might be finished. Eventually.
Maybe.
It's
going to be finished early in this bracket, probably.
Oops. And there you have it. That is the Amara region. Sam, after looking at these matchups, what do you see?
Oh, if I was Andrew with I'm a Monster, I would be steaming right now at the committee. You got My Girlfriend is a Screen as the number 2 seed. You got Kill Happy as a 3. Unstoppable Force at 4. Greatest Showdown 5. Forgotten Things 6. Those 2 through 6 seeds are absolutely brutal. If I'm a Monster can get out of the Amara region, just give it the championship.
There you have it. That concludes the bracket reveal. All 4 regions, all 64 films, their seeds, their matchups, all of it. Instructions on how to vote will be posted in the chat. We'll progress through all the rounds, and the winner will get something to be determined. Maybe a trophy, maybe a pizza party, maybe a thank you note, maybe an emoji react. Who's to say? But at the end of the day, the power is with you, the people. So get out there and vote.
May your favorite or best film win. Not your best film, but the best film.
Or your best film.
Or maybe
if it's
your
the best film.
Yeah.
It could be worse. Do you have anything else you want to add? Or?
No.
All right. I guess that concludes the...
All right, pause this.